Hello, and welcome to the Outcry Theatre Podcast. I'm Becca Johnson-Spinos, and I'm the Artistic Director of Outcry Theatre. Every episode of this podcast delves into the artistic process of creating theatre. This episode is about our current production of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. A quick note before we start. We had sound equipment issues during the recording of this interview, but the content was so compelling that we still wanted to share it with you. Hi, I'm here with the stars of Romeo and Juliet. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Fallon Goldsmith. I'm 16 years old and in 10th grade, and I'm playing Juliet.
Hi, I'm Arianna Sy. I'm 15 years old. I'm in 9th grade, and I'm playing Juliet.
Hi, I'm Stratton. I am 17 years old, a senior, and I am playing Romeo.
Hi, I'm Harrison Polen. I'm 15 years old and in 10th grade, and I'm playing Romeo.
So we've decided to set our version of the story in the circus, and that's obviously transformed the setting of the story quite a bit. Can you guys talk to me about our concept and how that's changed the story?
So when Miss Becca decided to set R&J in the circus, it was really interesting because now we're like rival circuses with the Montagues and the Capulets. And so it's interesting to see the different parts they play and kind of circus that they are and how that makes us different. And it's an interesting thing to learn our different parts and how we can make the characters that we play kind of have to do with the roles we are in the circus as well. Put those two together has been really interesting.
And so what role does Juliet have in the circus?
Juliet is a tightrope walker, and so we have learned to walk on the tightrope and kind of just learning more about that and kind of getting to bring that kind of more dancer, tightrope walker side into the way she walks and the way she acts and holds herself.
Romeo and Juliet itself is somewhat of a theatrical show. The show opens with all the characters as narrators talking to the audience about what's going to happen in the show. The whole feel of the show is that we are performers and circus acts doing different things, and the fact that we've gone and learned from a professional about how it is to work and be in the circus has really enhanced that theatrical aspect to the show, and it's really brought a whole new level of what we've been able to do.
So Circus Capulet is a little bit more of the fancier circus, a little bit more, I guess, glamorous, and Lord Capulet is a ringmaster, and our nurse is a bearded lady, and Lady Capulet is a showgirl, and so we're just very showy and a lot more glamorous. We've got all the warm tones and like just really bright, kind of more the fancy, classy kind of circus.
And while the Capulets are more of the daytime circus, the Montagues are more of the nighttime circus. So we're a bit more slummy, we're a bit darker, we are a bit less fancy and well-cultured than the Capulets. But I think that adds more fun to the circus. Like Mercutio, he's a very dark, kind of sadistic clown. Romeo is the up-and-coming ringmaster, while his father is still the main ringmaster. He's learning under his father's wing, and I think it really adds a lot into Romeo's character of being this grand performer who's able to like captivate an audience.
So you mentioned, Andy, that we did some training with Joseph Gibby, who is from the Lone Star Circus. What was that like working with him, and what did you learn? And just tell me about that process.
Well, Gibby is, first off, a fantastic performer. He's been performing in circuses for over a decade, so he really knows everything he's talking about. You can put him up to any circus task, and he can do it. He can tightrope, he can juggle, he can walk on his hands, he can do anything you ask him to do. So having him come in and really teach us what being in a circus is like. He taught us all the warm-ups they do, going across the floor, doing different stretches and exercises. We spent a day learning how to juggle and spin plates, and it was rowdy and fun, and we really just got the feel of what a circus is like. People have been learning tricks and stunts, and the four of us have been learning how to tightrope. So it's just been really incredible getting to add this sort of new arsenal of tricks and tools to this new idea that we've been bringing to the show, and having this school able to assist us in that learning has been fabulous.
So you mentioned that you guys have been working on walking on the tightrope. We're doing that for the balcony scene, which is probably the most famous scene from Romeo and Juliet. What's that been like, and how is the pressure of that been?
Well, at first, it was definitely a struggle. We got on, and the balance was hard to master at first, but I feel like eventually we were able to find our center of gravity and be able to walk across it. We definitely gained a lot of balance during the process of it, and I feel like what really helped is I was able to do some training like ab work and strength conditioning, because that really does take a lot of strength, and being able to balance on something so small does take a lot of strength.
It really just changes the way this whole scene is perceived. You think about the balcony scene, and it is just so famous. You think about Juliet on her high balcony, Romeo's arms extended up, and it's just so not overdone because it's the most famous scene of all time, but the way that we have this set in the circus, where you think Juliet is up late practicing on the tightrope for her show tomorrow, and then Romeo sneaks into the Capulet tent, not the Capulet garden, but the Capulet tent, and then they're on the tightrope together, and it just changes the entire scene, and it's just so incredible to be able to do something so different with a scene that seems so set in stone from the way it's written and the way it's been done for hundreds of years.
Do you think that the story really lends itself to the circus? And what other kind of aspects of the story do you think are kind of illuminated by setting it at the circus?
All the characters, they just, like you said, they lend themselves to the circus, and being able to be these new things, they just add color to these characters. And then you have someone like Mercutio, who is very crazy and very over the top and weird and dark. And setting him as this sort of dark clown, he gets to have a maniacal laugh, and he gets to do some cool juggling. And it adds some new, not necessarily modern, but just exciting new life to them when you're watching them on stage.
I mean, when we first found out that we were going to set it in the circus, it seemed kind of crazy. But as we've been doing it, it just makes so much sense with a lot of the characters, like the nurse being a bearded lady. Like, she's so goofy, and it just, it all kind of makes sense. And I feel like everyone's part that they play in the circus also has to do with their character. And I think it's been really cool to see how people have taken their role in the circus and really brought it into who they play. And it makes a lot of sense with the two different circuses being rivals, and that's just brought a whole really cool element to it.
So you guys are playing probably the two most famous characters of all time, besides maybe Hamlet. Has that been super intimidating? What's that like? And how do you sort of combat that to make them feel like real people instead of these mythic characters that we think of them as?
Because it is such a famous show, and because the majority of theater people and people in general know this story and know the characters in it, I feel like taking on such an incredible and popular role has been a huge task. And I feel like we really tried to dig deep into what these characters really feel like. Because it is Shakespeare and because it can be confusing at times, I feel like one of the biggest struggles has been trying to get behind the text and behind the words.
Romeo's really scary. He's really tough. He's really hard because he is just so famous. Because if you ask anybody, if you say the word Romeo, they go, Leo, Leo, Leo. You ask someone, what are Romeo's character traits? They go, I mean, he's pretty. Romeo is this, he's like a god. It's Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? It's hard to take this character that is so famous and so immortalized and so loved by every person in the world, and take him and hold him and be like, okay, he's not some god. This is just a real dude. He's some 17-year-old kid. He has his flaws. He has his character traits. He has his likes, his dislikes. He has his bros. He has his girl. He's not some boring, stale, flat, just pretty boy. He can't be that. He has to be some character with life and passions.
He's one of the most, if not the most famous character of all time. And going into playing such a character, you can't help but feel worried that you're not going to be believed. You're not going to be like, people are just going to be, oh, it's just another young guy playing Romeo. Pass. Who cares? I've seen 100 people do it. And it's a constant fear. But I think that we've struck a really good evenness between being raw emotion and like believability, but still keeping the like awe and wonder that Romeo feels, like when he sees Juliet or when he's just monologuing about her. It's just, I think we've done a very good job at striking a balance between fantasy and what reality.
So I think whenever I approach Shakespeare, and actually most shows, but Shakespeare in particular, I try to have a really good balance between the text and the words being important, and also visceral bodily storytelling being important. Particularly in Romeo and Juliet, I think that's very key. We have a lot of dance elements that are storytelling moments, and also sword fighting, and also circus things, circus movement, and we're balancing all of that with the very classic text of the play. Tell me a little bit about delving into the text and pairing that with the movement, and also sort of just about working on the different movement pieces and doing storytelling through movement.
The beginning of our Act 2 is a dance where time is fast forwarding and then going in slow motion and reversing, and Romeo and Juliet are reliving all the past events that have happened, the happy ones and the sad ones, and it really just extremely enhances the story. And these dances are just exciting. They're fun. They're in a long show full of Shakespeare, getting a dance that's just so emotional or heartfelt or just awesome to watch in between these long scenes. It's just a really great contrast to what the actual acting and the story and the text, to get to see this non-verbal expression of what is going on.
Like Andy said, all our dances are really, really cool, and they all tell some really interesting stories. And one of my favorites is we actually have this really cool dance at the party scene with the Capulets, which is like this cool dream dance of when R and J meet each other. And it's like one of the coolest things, because getting to have this like dream moment where we see each other for the first time and kind of letting that fuel us into our scene where we really do talk and see each other.
I think one of the scariest parts of the show is the speech. The way that Shakespeare wrote this show, the language and the elegance in what he says, that is really hard to understand at times, and then other times it makes perfect sense. But at the same time, I think adding dances to kind of visually show you what happened rather than just saying it in a language you might not understand, like Shakespeare, I think the dances just add a bit more clarity to the situation. And I think it just adds a whole other side of the spectrum to what you normally think of when you think of Shakespeare.
So in addition to all the lovely, positive, happy emotions that you guys get to feel when you're falling in love with each other, there's also a lot of scenes in Act 2 where you go through some really, really difficult, tough, emotional things, including many, many times where you guys are ready to take your own lives, which is probably the most desperate and sad thing that a person can have to experience. What's your process been like to prepare for those moments, and how have you sort of attacked those sorts of things, knowing, how difficult those things are to access as an actor?
When we first find out in the show at the top of Act 2, after one of our happiest monologues we have in the show, we find out that Romeo has just killed Tybalt. And we go from being on this amazing high, being like, I can't wait for my husband to come meet me here, to feeling this insane pang of hurt and brokenness, and we have to go there. We really have to go there. And it is a quick transition. And so one of the things that personally I do to prepare is when you're in a real life situation, when you really feel those deep emotions that do bring you to tears and bring you to a place that's really dark and really just a horrible place, you don't want to be there, what I do is breathing and really just thinking. Like, you can't think about the fact, like, okay, I'm hurting, I'm broken, I'm depressed, I'm gonna cry. You have to think, I'm gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And you breathe, you syncopate your breath, you really think the opposite of the emotions that the audience will see.
It's a hard place because no one wants to let themselves go there, and you have to be very vulnerable and being willing to just let go of everything and try to put yourself there and just live through it. And it's very scary to kind of have to really think about these things, and also thinking about sometimes relating things in your life that you can kind of picture and relate into the situation you're in as best as you can. It's something I try to do as well that sometimes helps me in finding pinches. But really the biggest thing for me is just really learning what you're doing in the text, and then from there just letting yourself go and dive into it emotionally. And it's very scary, but it's pretty cool once you start to really get it and it starts to kind of all click together.
To try to help me mentally get to that place, I have to physically get to that place. A lot of times I run around like in the cold outside. I'll like push against a wall. Like Arianna said, breathing is really important. Just get your breath sort of kind of like hyperventilating in a way to just really physically feel like you are being put in one of these situations, one of these stressful situations that you can't get out of.
What has been the most challenging thing about playing these parts?
I'd say the most challenging thing about playing Romeo is both the extreme bliss that he feels and the extreme sadness that he feels. Because you have to be able to display the immediate love and affection towards Juliet after just one scene, but then just an act later you have to be wanting to kill yourself because you've been banished. And it's just been a very strange thing to be able to play the happiest character I've ever played and the saddest and most just distraught character you can think of. And it's been really hard to grasp just the pure sadness and joy that he feels in the span of 3 days. In like a couple of days, he goes from being kind of melancholy to being the most happy he's ever been in his life to being the saddest he's ever been in his life. It's an intense feeling of so many emotions that you just can't describe.
When you're acting these lines, when you're saying these lines, for me personally, the hardest thing was that I'm saying something completely different in my head. I'm saying a line that Shakespeare wrote, but I'm thinking something completely different, because you have to think about the things that you would say in real life situations. And I think that was one of the hardest things to go into, especially the line that we have, one of the most famous ones, oh Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? You know, most people are like, oh, like she's like, where is Romeo? No, you are thinking, as Juliet, you're thinking, wait, why does he have to be Romeo? Why does he have to be this Montague? Why does he have to be someone that I'm supposed to hate? And all of that's going through your head while you're saying these something completely different. So that was one of the things that I found was the hardest thing to get to. But once you get to it, it is an incredible feeling.
What's been the most fun part about playing these roles?
I always love getting to be in shows, whether it's in chorus or with a partner, and really getting to build a super fun relationship. And even though it's really sad and it's crazy, the relationship that we've built, the R&Js have built, is like incredible. And it's been so fun getting to work on that and kind of develop that relationship.
The entire cast getting to work with every single person has been incredible. This is a cast of people who are so dedicated to the show. It almost does feel like a circus because everyone is killing their own role. Like, everyone knows exactly what they're doing, and every single person is amazing at it. And we all come together in our big circus tent, and everyone performs their role, and we have scenes together, and we're working together, and we're doing tricks together, and we're dancing together. And it's just magical and fun and just pure, like, awesomeness. It's just pure magic and just crazy amounts of work and happiness and joy put in by each actor to create one of the most memorable experiences we will all have in our lives.
Why should people come see our production of Romeo and Juliet?
Everyone should come and see Romeo and Juliet because it is going to be such a magical adventure that we will take you on with all our characters and our dances, and we're doing some incredible stuff that I think everyone will really love. And this show has a lot of heart and a lot of love, not just between Romeo and Juliet, but between all the characters, because they just care about each other so much, and there's so many different relationships and bonds, and a lot happens. They go through a pretty crazy time, and it's going to be a story and an adventure that everyone will want to go on because it is so magical and so exciting, and there's always something so exciting happening, and I think everyone's going to really love it, and so you should all come see Romeo and Juliet.
I dare to say that this show will be unlike any Shakespearean show you have ever seen. And definitely different than any other production of Romeo and Juliet you've ever seen.
This story will take you on new highs and then drop you down completely to the depths of your deepest, darkest feelings. And I think being able to see something like that and see something like that on stage especially is something so special and so complex. And because it's set in the circus and because we have that circus theme, it gives it so much beauty and so much depth. And the circus is already something so incredible and so beautiful, and when you add that to something like Shakespeare, it gives this new kind of this look to something, and then combine that with theater. So just come see R&J.
Well, that's it. Thanks, guys. Thank you for being here with me and doing this.
Thank you. This was
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah,
So much
great.
fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode of the Outcry Theatre Podcast. This podcast has been produced by me, Becca Johnson-Spinos, and edited by Jason Johnson-Spinos. For more information about this production and Outcry Theatre, you can find us on Facebook or at a website, outcrytheatre.com. That's theater with an R-E. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your theater-loving friends.